Hello, everyone, and welcome to Light and Labor. I'm really excited to share with you all today. This is a new way of taking in this topic. I felt like it's really important and growing in importance. And as I was doing the research for this, I came to understand even more how important it is. So let's get started with the slides, and then we'll go through my talk, and then I'll open up the floor to you all so that you can ask questions if you need. So let me know if you are now seeing my screen. I hope so. Let me know if not. Feel free to interrupt me if I go too fast or if you have questions. I can't see the chat while I'm screen sharing, but I do have my friend and colleague, Amanda Liz, who's very knowledgeable, and she can also help you. Okay, so beyond the twinkle lights, I made this, it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but there's, you always see the birth pool set up with the lovely twinkle lights, and they, it's great. We understand women like to labor in a dim environment, and I wanted to take it a little bit further and just say, what if we go even further down that rabbit hole to really understand what's happening with light and labor and how this could apply at scale for all women, and even women who aren't at home, but also in the hospital setting. And there's a cruel irony right now where the hospital is one of the most disrupted light environments, and women who are at high risk are kind of shuffled and funneled into that environment and they're the ones who are the most in need of having better circadian lighting. So there's tons of trials that they're starting to do looking at how could we actually improve light. And by the end of this class, you should understand light, darkness. What do I mean by that? What can actually be done? What can you do? What can we think about doing individually and on a grander scale? So this is the science and tradition of light and darkness as supports for labor. And let's just give a quick overview so we can orient to where we're headed today. We have, my goal for you is to understand the types of light that influence labor and know how to apply them for yourself or others. So we'll talk about the visible light spectrum. We'll talk about light's many mechanisms of action. We'll talk about the problems with not knowing how light affects labor. We'll talk about the best lighting for daytime labor and the best lighting for nighttime labor, because it actually may be different. And how dim does it have to be to count as dark? You'd all know my publication name, I hope, is Brighter Days, Darker Nights. You can find me there on Instagram as Brighter Days, Darker Nights, and on Substack as Brighter Days, Darker Nights. And that is because that is the core of circadian rhythm. Like, the most impactful thing you can do is make days brighter and nights dimmer. So we'll kind of look at what actually does that mean? How can you measure it? We'll look at light and placenta birth, and then light in the newborn baby, give you a quick summary, and then move into Q&A so you all can ask your questions and get support and support each other. So here, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nico Kennedy, or if you're new to me, I'm a mother of 5, I'm a doula, I'm also the director of research at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. And through all of the experiences, I've had so many experiences of my own with labor and birth. This picture here, kind of a little vulnerable share, but this was my one hospital birth that I had. So I've had 4 home births, 1 birth in the hospital. This was with my second. And that labor was 49 hours in that hospital environment. And really, I learned so much there. Being in it myself, not just supporting someone else going through that, but having also supported other moms going through that. All of my home births, this is just anecdotal, but my home births each lasted about 12 hours. Wake up in labor across the day, have the baby at sunset. Whereas it was day after day in the hospital environment trying to settle down. And I didn't know as much about light as I do now. And this class is really to kind of try to help equalize that, because we, ideally women are able to have healthy, happy, physiological childbirth, good birth outcomes, happy mama, happy baby, not just healthy, but also happy, ideally both, right? Regardless of the setting that a woman gives birth. So my goal here is to kind of help equalize that in terms of my credentials, I am a certified labor doula. I'm a CAPA trained postpartum doula. I'm a board certified quantum biology practitioner, graduate of the University of Oregon. I studied biology and psychology. I thought I was going to become an OBGYN, and I sidetracked into science writing and labor doula, birth doula, postpartum doula, all of this support that's kind of more of the non-medical, because that's where I see that we are really failing the most, is in this, the structural support around women giving birth. And that's where I want to make a big difference. So thank you all for being here and learning all of this fascinating stuff. We're going to dive into some really cutting edge information and answer the question, why should birth suite lighting look like this? If you're not familiar with this kind of lighting, at first it can almost look a little bit spooky, or, it's Halloweenish. Why do we have all this orange and red? And the answers come from the fields of circadian and quantum biology. So to get the full spread here, check it out. This is the light spectrum. This is how we think of light as a whole. And it's really interesting and really cool that the part that we can see of the light spectrum is just this tiny little sliver. You can see that visible light over kind of towards the right. But all of these frequencies are extremely powerful. So obviously the atmosphere is blocking out the highest intensity photon energy that we get from the sun. We all know X-rays and how powerful X-rays are, and you have to wear equipment, right? When you get an X-ray, you have to have shielding equipment so it doesn't damage your organs or get where it's not meant to be. You have to have years of training to know how to operate an X-ray machine. For years, everyone's been told to fear the sun because of the ultraviolet light component. And now we're kind of learning that, oh, you actually do need some amount of ultraviolet light, not too much. And then the visible light, we're going to talk so much about, we're going to expand that visible light so you can actually see the different types of visible light and how those impact our health. And then infrared is also really powerful. We all know that. You can feel it as heat. The microwaves, the radio frequencies, we know how powerful those are. Those are what make all of our TV and cell phones. Those are just also light frequencies. And then at the very extremely low end, we have under 10 hertz, the Schumann resonances. And that is where the Earth's frequencies are. Oops, I forgot to mute my phone. Just a second, folks. So down there, the Earth's frequencies are really cool because that is under 10 hertz, and that is what happens when we're out in nature. And those Schumann resonances, it turns out, synchronize our heart rate and also impact our vagal tone, which really influences our emotional processing centers. So they actually did a really cool experiment where they grounded babies' incubators in the NICU to the earth, and they would see an immediate improvement of baby's vagal tone when they would do that. And that's where you're starting to see like these PEMF, which are magnetic pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices for pain management happening. So really cool things happening in the extremely low frequencies. But most of this I'm not going to have time to talk about, because what I want to focus on for this class is what we can really do right now without like disrupting and totally making the whole, changing up the whole system. Just like what's like the basic, like quick and dirty thing that we could do to start improving outcomes. So we're going to lock in, especially on the visual effects. And a lot of them are happening, or the non-visual effects of light happening a lot through the circadian rhythm. So this is somewhat newer science. We are only in the first 100 years of really talking and thinking and understanding circadian rhythms. And this is my wheelhouse. This is where I have been diving in for the past few years to pull out everything from all of this deep science that moms and the women and doctors and everyone who's serving moms can pull out, that's useful to improve the way that we're welcoming new babies into the world. We do such an important thing as moms, and this is just another tool that we can use to help out and make it better. So welcome to the future of light-based medicine. This whole, complex graphic here I don't think anywhere on here does it mention how it impacts labor, but I have pulled out as many studies as I can find. There are hundreds of thousands now of circadian research studies on everything from, cancer, immune system, sleep is the obvious one, but also mood is a really, really big one. Pretty much every system of the body has circadian ties. And so when we look at a lot of the chronic health conditions, we see connections to the circadian rhythm. But I believe that this is also why giving birth even 20 years ago was different. So along this same timeline right here, we have two timelines, right? In the beginning of that timeline, when they were starting to understand that circadian research, most lighting, we did have widespread rollout of artificial light, but it was incandescent light. And you can see an incandescent light bulb puts out a spectrum that's really similar to natural sunset light. Then what happened in the 1950s was the fluorescent light expansion, where we started to see this fluorescent light. And you can see how much has been cut away, right? This is what makes them more energy efficient, is cutting away different frequencies. And then you can see in the 1970s, that's when the compact fluorescent light bulb was invented. And that's when we really saw fluorescent light going widespread, even like individual homes, not just facilities and energy efficient areas needing it, but like everyone's starting to have access to this fluorescent light. And then the LEDs were really started to be heavily researched, invested in the 90s. And then by 2000, it was really starting to roll out at the consumer level. And then those have gotten to this ultra efficient, right? And so every time that they're going for more efficiency, it's by taking out these red frequencies, these extra frequencies. And then the way that they make them still effective so that we can still see is by putting in the blue and greens. And as you can see on the comparison light, that circadian light, that part, that's the part that activates our circadian rhythm. So we're going to talk about how the circadian rhythm and these things are influencing across the time of labor here. But that's just kind of gives you some food for thought about why things are different, and that maybe we haven't been thinking about the light as the driver of some of these things. So the first one, in developed countries, this was from 2014, so kind of right as the LEDs are really taking off and the fluorescents and halogens have all been well adopted. So in developed countries, the widespread use of manufactured light at night alters circadian rhythms and suppresses the nocturnal production of melatonin, thereby likely reducing nighttime labor onset and spreading the process throughout the 24-hour period. So it used to be that we would fairly regularly, and a lot of midwives still see this, there's a tendency for labor to start in the night or in the very early morning. And there's a synergy between melatonin and oxytocin that is driving that nighttime, right? There's a circadian timing to it. So this isn't talking about when baby is born. This is just talking about when does labor start? When do the contractions really start getting going? And it used to mainly be at night. But remember, we've all now had the rollout of this artificial light now being available and programming circadian rhythms at night to think that it's day. So the wrong light at the wrong times disrupts the mother, which in turn disrupts the baby. And this has potentially lifelong impacts. So I've taught other classes about the importance of circadian rhythm and some of those lifetime impacts. So in this, we're really focused on the moment of labor as the acute moment, but it goes much further. So instead of having the wrong light at the wrong times, how do we get the right light? The right light, the prenatal care, which is the information that we should be giving moms while they're pregnant so they can do a good job for themselves and for their babies with their circadian rhythm. We need the right light. So we need, I always talk about it, brighter days, darker nights. Here's the actual quantification. Bright light in the day, most people need approximately 1 to 2 hours outside daily. So that is why right now as I'm teaching this, I'm actually outside of my gazebo. It's a cloudy day. It's overcast. It's actually sprinkling. Thank goodness I have a little roof here. And When I take my glasses off, that light's coming in, it's shining into my eyes, talking to my brain, telling my brain that it is indeed daytime and helping to replenish melatonin stores and all kinds of things, programming my body to make everything go well and know that it's daytime. This is really, really important. The converse side is needing that dim light at night, and we need approximately 2 hours in under 10 lux before bedtime, and then about 8 hours in under 1 lux for sleep, and that allows the pineal gland to release its melatonin. You can see here in some of these charts here across pregnancy, so in the beginning there's a big surge of the melatonin. And as you know, in the first trimester, a lot of women have a lot of increased need to go pee. So this is the first beginning of trouble for a lot of modern women, is they get up and they flip all the lights on to make it safely to the bathroom. And that light shuts off that nighttime melatonin, and it takes about 2 hours after they get to bed for that melatonin to start flowing again. So this is actually very disruptive to circadian rhythms, and why so many women might have a better time in pregnancy and birth if they